Can I ask people to please take their seats? We're going to begin because we are in a time constraint. I want to welcome the Minister here today to the Committee for the Status of Women. We are looking at the main estimates, 2012-13, votes 30 and 35, under the Human Resources and Skills Development Ministry. Minister, you have 10 minutes for your opening statement, and would you begin, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you to all of the committee members for inviting me to discuss the main estimates for status of women. I'm very happy to be here. I trust you all had celebrated International Women's Week last week and International Women's Day. I hope you had a good one. Before I proceed, I would like to introduce to you my officials from the Status of Women Department that are here today. I'm joined today by Suzanne Clément, the head of agency at Status of Women Canada, Linda Savoie, who's our Director General of the Women's Program, and Joanne Tremblay, who's our Chief Financial Officer. And I want to thank them for joining us here at the committee and making time to be here with us. In addition to discussing the main estimates, Madam Chair, I'd like to update you, because it's been a little while since I've had the chance to see all of you, on some of our current work and also highlight some of our recent achievements, particularly in the areas of recognizing the International Day of the Girl, which all political parties were involved in, gender-based analysis, which we've been working on with other government departments, and supporting grassroots projects through our women's program.
First, let me congratulate the committee for undertaking its current study on improving the economic prospects for Canadian girls. It's an important issue, and I look forward to your report.
Estimates, of course, for Status of Women Canada, you know from the report, will be $29.4 million for the 2012-2013 fiscal year. And of this amount, $18.9 million will be allocated for grants and contributions under the Women's Program. As you know, our government support for community-based women's projects has close to doubled since we took office, and it's at its highest levels ever. Status of Women Canada's work remains focused on three priority areas: increasing women's economic security and prosperity, encouraging women's leadership and democratic participation, and, of course, ending violence against women and girls. With these priorities, Status of Women Canada is acting in a very targeted and efficient way. Our government is committed to responding to the needs of Canadians in a prudent and also fiscally responsible way. As you know, internationally, the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women is Status of Women Canada's primary focus. Last year, I, along with Plan Canada, led the call for an International Day of the Girl to help raise awareness of girls' rights and to focus attention on the fact, of course, that we all know that girls' rights are human rights. I was pleased that the House of Commons unanimously supported having Canada lead this international campaign, and I thank all political parties and members here for their support of this initiative. After much hard work, the resolution designating the International Day of the Girl was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on December 19th of last year, and Canada, of course, will celebrate the first International Day of the Girl on October 11th this year, 2012. So 10, 11, 12, mark it in your calendars, will be the first of many days to come, where we can focus on the issues that uniquely affect girls. I've recently returned from this year's meeting at the UN Commission on the Status of Women, and I can recount to you that everyone is very excited about celebrating this day, and I was very proud that Canada was recognized as the leader in this initiative, and also inspired to hear what other countries are planning on doing for their day of celebration to highlight challenges in their own countries that girls face when it comes to human rights. This day is being seen around the world as an opportunity to highlight the positive contributions and leadership roles that girls play in their communities, and of course to bring to light some of these most challenging issues. Girls have plans. We heard from girls that are going to use this day as a way to raise awareness about their right to an education, access to health care, and their fight to stop some of the very difficult challenges they face is in harmful cultural practices such as honor-motivated violence, female genital mutilation, and forced marriages. Status of Women Canada, of course, as you know, plays a lead role in the implementation of gender-based analysis, which is otherwise known as GBA to many members on this committee across government. And as you know, this is a tool that assists us in systematically integrating gender considerations, that is, of course, the unique attributes of men and women and how their circumstances may differ, into the decision-making process of government, and of course helps us develop better policies. As an example, recently officials from the Status of Women Department, at my request, met with the Commissioner of the RCMP to offer our assistance, advice and encouragement to conduct a gender-based analysis of their policies to support the RCMP in finding solutions to the issue of sexual harassment. Of course, an essential element of conducting gender-based analysis is the availability of reliable information. En vue d'atteindre cet objectif, 18
To meet this objective, 18 federal organizations were engaged to support the release of the 6th edition of Statistic Canada's Women in Canada, copies of which I am pleased to table with you today.
A copy of this. They'll be handed out to you, and we're happy to share that with you today. This is the work that Status of Women did with Statistics Canada in compiling some excellent gender-based statistical information that can be used, of course, not only by the government but by NGOs and provincial and territorial municipal governments to understand the situation of women across the country, and of course to help them develop more responsive policies and programs. So we'll be sharing a copy of that with all of you today. The Women's Program continues to play a critical role in supporting the work of Canadian organizations at the local, the regional and the national level to tackle the challenging issues of violence, economic security and of course democratic participation. Through Status of Women Canada, we've supported now 500 new projects since 2007, again in 3 priority areas: improving women's economic security and prosperity, ending violence against women and girls, and advancing women in leadership roles and decision-making. These projects, of course, invest where the need is greatest and where there is clear potential for making a difference in the lives of women and girls. And through targeted calls for proposals, Status of Women Canada has been able to support new organizations and expand its reach across the country. This targeted approach has also provided Status of Women Canada with flexibility, which is key, in responding to new and emerging issues facing Canadian women and girls. For instance, last fall we issued 2 new calls for proposal. One involved the engagement of young people, in particular students and student groups, to prevent violence against women on university and college campuses. And this was a very innovative idea because we turned to students themselves and students' organizations to ask them what they thought would work to address the issue of safety on campuses. And just last week, we were also able to announce the results of another call for proposal that we did last year that supports the advancement of women and girls living in rural and remote areas and small urban centres. We were able to announce 48 projects that will support the economic security and safety of women and girls in rural and remote communities. Of course, we believe, that women's safety goes hand in hand with their economic security. These projects are as diverse as the communities that they will serve, and the women and girls who live in them as well. One-size-fits-all solution does not work given the many different realities of rural, remote, and northern communities. For example, there's a local project in British Columbia that's going to develop a community response plan for support services and to make their support services more accessible to women, while at the same time working on issues of violence. Dans le cadre d'un projet au Québec,
in a project in Quebec, young women will work with stakeholders to develop a new economic plan that addresses the barriers they face. And in Nova Scotia, Aboriginal women will be linked through a community plan that shares knowledge and helps address violence against women.
Also reflect Canada's theme for this year's International Women's Week, which is Strong Women, Strong Canada, Women in Rural, Remote and Northern Communities. key to Canada's economic prosperity. This theme, of course, reminds us that Canada is a very vast country where nearly 1 in 5 women live outside of large urban centres. We also brought along for you to share with you, if you haven't received it yet, a compilation of all of the work that we've done in regards to women and girls in rural and remote in northern communities, and outlines some of the projects that are happening across the country, and we'll make sure that we share that with you as well. We do hope that this theme inspires Canadians to celebrate the unique lives of more than 3 million women who live in over 5,000 rural, remote, and northern communities across this country. Together, all of these efforts provide women and girls with the knowledge, the skills, and the tools and resources that can and do facilitate their full participation in economic, social, and democratic life in Canada. I should also add that by using targeted calls for proposals, and by doing this, it's allowed us more flexibility, and it has responded directly to the government's objective of streamlining our practices and addressing some of the long-standing concerns about reducing the administrative burden that NGOs and community organizations had. So we've had very good response about using these kinds of targeted calls for proposals from groups themselves. Of course, violence against women is an issue that cuts across communities, regions, provinces, and territories, and Aboriginal women and girls are particularly vulnerable. The Government of Canada, of course, is committed to addressing this serious issue and is working with organizations across Canada towards this common goal. Since 2007, the Women's Program alone
we're well over time now. I wonder if you could wrap up in
Sure, I'd be happy to.
5 seconds.
Just to highlight that the Women's Program alone has funded over 60 projects now to support Aboriginal women, and more than 60% of those have gone directly to address the issue of violence. All that to say that of the 500 projects that the Status of Women's Program has funded over the last few years, many of those go towards ending violence against women, but in particular supporting our 3 priorities. We're happy to be here to answer questions on the estimates or on any other questions that the committee may have.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. We certainly appreciate you being here. We are now going into a 7-minute round, and unfortunately, we only have time for 1 round. We'll begin with Madame Troupé.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Minister Ambrose and the officials for coming today. I think I speak for everyone on the committee that everyone has been looking forward to hearing you today, so thank you for being here and taking the time. I have a question for Minister Ambrose. Why did you make International Day of the Girl a priority? And can you tell us what the reaction was from some of the other countries on the establishment of the International Day of the Girl?
Well, we made it a priority because we met with a number of girls from around the world who work through Plan Canada on a project called Because I'm a Girl, and they talked about some of the challenges that they face, whether it's forced marriages or access to education, access to health care, female genital mutilation, and they said these are issues that we face as girls, not as women. And when we talked about International Women's Day, their clear and honest response was, we don't connect with that. We want to talk about things at school that affect us. And so it occurred to me that this was a great idea. So they asked if Canada would champion this resolution through the United Nations, which we did. And it was a lot of work, but we got great reception from a number of countries, particularly Turkey and Peru, who came on board very early to help champion this through the United Nations. And in the end, we ended up with 110 co-sponsoring countries. So every country will celebrate this in a different way, but we met with a number of countries that are going to be focusing their celebration on quite challenging issues for girls, particularly some controversial issues like forced marriage. And so I think it allows governments themselves and advocates within those governments to champion some of these issues that are a little more difficult to tackle. And again, if girls know their rights at a very, very young age, they're more willing to exercise them. So we think it's a great initiative, and we're happy to have championed it.
Thank you. In your opening remarks, you mentioned you're at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. Can you tell us what you were able to do while you were there?
Well, we were there, of course, with a delegation the theme this year was the same theme that we chose, which was a spotlight on women and girls in rural and remote and northern communities and the challenges that they face. And we thought that it was an excellent theme for Canada as well, so we chose it as our own international, our own theme here for International Women's Week in Canada, because of course we have a lot of women that live, I mentioned in my opening remarks, there's 3 million Canadian women living in about 5,000 rural and remote communities, and they experience a different reality than women that live in cities. They're more isolated, they have less access to services, and they, because of that, can experience sometimes more difficulty in getting the support they need, especially when it comes to economic security and, of course, physical safety if they're experiencing violence. So it was a good opportunity to highlight what we can do in Canada. I was really glad that this was the theme, because it gave us an opportunity at Status of Women through the Women's Program to make connections with groups across the country that we hadn't made connections with before. We put out a targeted call for proposals, and we had almost 250 responses from groups in small towns that have never really contacted us before. So now we have a connection with them, and if we can help them, we can get them the information that may help them. And so it was, I think, a win-win all around. Of course, at the UN, a lot of countries were focused on the issue of poverty that women are facing in third world countries, in rural and remote areas. But as I said, here in Canada, we were dealing more on issues of isolation that women face in rural and remote communities. So it was good, a good meeting for Canada, and we participated in a number of different roundtables while we were there. I co-chaired a roundtable with some organizations that are doing work to involve men and boys in the dialogue to end violence against women and girls, and that was very fruitful. And beyond that, of course, had one-on-one meetings or bilateral meetings with some ministers from other countries to discuss some of the initiatives that they're working on and share some of the things that Canada's working on.
Thank you. Mr. Good?
Yes, about 3 minutes.
Okay, good. I have a question for Suzanne Clement. I know it's been stated many times that the government is committed to ensuring gender-based analysis is used by all departments and agencies. The former Auditor General pointed out in her spring 2009 report that ultimately the responsibility for performing gender-based analysis rests with department and agencies. Is GBA really being used in the departments, or can you explain maybe a little bit about that?
Yes, departments were asked as part of the departmental action plan on gender-based analysis to implement structures, procedures, processes, and policies within their own departments in order to ensure that they institutionalize GBA as an ongoing and sustainable practice within their organizations. Much of the work that is done in this area is to input into the development processes for memorandums to cabinet and TB submissions. And we know that the central agencies are playing a role in ensuring that the departments have undertaken a GBA as they develop the processes for policies and new programs. And all TB submissions and policies are subject to that analysis. And although we don't have access to information that would be available to the department on the development of an MC, we know that they are making great efforts in the department in order to implement GBA as a sustainable practice, just from the many calls we get and the many interactions we have with departments in helping them implement it. Some of the things that we do to assist them would be we help them at institutionalizing the process within their organization. Each department is structured differently, so we talk with them, we provide them advice as to how to best ensure its implementation. We also provide them with training, but in particular access to trainers. We provide them with training tools, checklists, information on the use of GBA, how to understand GBA. We're also in the final stages of developing an online training session for GBA, and departments have shown a very keen interest on obtaining those. We also have an interdepartmental table on GBA.
Madam, I'm awfully sorry. We're at time. Perhaps you could continue with other questions.
Certainly.
Madame Bauvin, for 7 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for coming. And I apologize to those witnesses who showed up last week. We had votes that shortened our time with you. I'm very pleased to have the minister here, finally, before the Committee on the Status of Women. I say this kindly. Your presence is necessary because for all those who believe in the importance of the status of women, it is very important to see the leadership of the minister. It's very important. You have tremendous responsibilities with public works, but we must not forget that status of women is also part of your portfolio. We're here this afternoon to talk about the estimates. We know that the budget is going to be tabled on March 29th. What I would like to know is that, well, the past is something that teaches us a lot, but I think the future is something that is very important as well. Will you be coming back here? Because 40 minutes to discuss a whole year, well, that's very difficult to understand what leadership is being shown by the minister in this sector. Particularly, we know we're going through difficult times with the budgets. I know there are a lot of concerns with respect to the status of women and other organizations that work hand in hand with this agency and in the sector because everyone fears budget cutbacks and women are often hard hit by these cutbacks. So can we expect to see you back here quickly after the budget has been tabled? So at least we can have one session with you so we can see where you're headed with the budget for 2012, 2013.
And of course, the votes are not in any of our control, so I wish that we had more time today. But I'd be happy to come back.
Excellent, thank you. So I'll take your word for it, so that's great.
Yes, Madame Troupé.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that the committee can decide amongst us on another time when the minister can come back.
But at least we know that the minister is quite willing to come. So
sure. Yep.
I'd be surprised that the committee would want the minister to come back.
But still the committee.
Okay.
No. Okay, anyway, I won't start a debate
thank you.
on that. Excellent. Merci. Maintenant.
Thank you. Madam Minister, when I hear the status of women talk, and when I walk through Canada or even in New York City, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to accompany you with the Canadian delegation to the UN during this conference on the status of women, I hear two completely different speeches, if you like. Some show that there's a lot of naivety. I'm the critic for the status of women for the opposition, but I hear two different schools of thought, if you like. I hear about all these projects that you're investing in. I'm capable of doing the math. I can understand how much money is being allocated to status of women and how much I can see that you are spending more than the Liberals did. I'm not embarrassed to say that. But that being said, there are a lot of shortcomings in many places. I hear a lot of organizations that work with status women here in Canada state that they have a problem with salary equity, wage equity. That's not been resolved. There's a whole issue of violence against women. The issue of Sisters in Spirit. I often receive delegations from the First Nations who meet with me. How can you explain these two different schools of thought, or how would you explain these differences? Because it looks like things are going very well in your neck of the woods, but it's not necessarily the case elsewhere.
Always improvements that can be made in any government departments and programs, but I think that, kudos to the Status of Women's program for responding very well to some of the concerns that women's organizations had about flexibility. And we did this with the Blueprints project, and Suzanne might want to speak more to that. And also with our targeted call for proposals, we are making it much more easier for groups to apply in terms of the paperwork burden, because a lot of women's organizations, as you know, have have many volunteers, few paid employees, and usually are on a shoestring budget. So we're making it easier for them to apply. We're also have a continuous intake process so that if an organization does not have a project that is ready for funding, we can work with them to try and improve that, because they don't always have the capacity within their organization, but we do in our regional offices and at Status of Women here in Ottawa. So we are trying very hard to be very flexible, because we do understand the majority of organizations that we work with are working on shoestring budgets. But even then, in the last just 4 to 5 years, we've been able to fund 500 projects, and from many different parts of the country. And as I said in my opening remarks, these projects really do go to respond to those who are most in need, whether it's in our Aboriginal women's community or it's in our immigrant community, in projects that have been groundbreaking, working with cultural communities on issues like honor crimes, working with in other areas on human trafficking. I mean, all of these are, I think, very worthy projects, and I think Status of Women has done an excellent job in making the application process more accessible, more flexible, and giving us the opportunity to reach out to groups that we've never been able to access before. So I think the record is a good one.
But poverty amongst women has not improved in Canada, and there's still a lot of violence against women. I'm wondering if we're taking the right approach, but my time is limited, so I'd like to talk about about gender-based analysis. What I see is that the model is there, everybody agrees with it,
but nobody really evaluates if it's doing anything. Nobody is really going to the department, like even finance, the budget coming down. Is it going to be done based on gender-based analysis? Will we be able to evaluate it? Do we have the tools through Status of Women Canada to really put them to task and say, no, you didn't do it. Don't just put a little box down, done the analysis. Show, do we have a tool to evaluate if they do it?
I'm sorry, quickly, Minister.
Well, as Suzanne mentioned, all of the central agencies are making efforts to do gender-based analysis when they're bringing forward any programs, memorandums to cabinet. And of course, as I mentioned, one of the things that we can do at Status of Women Canada is we've worked with 18 different organizations across government to compile with Statistics Canada useful information regarding the position of women across the country. So this is also something that we can do as a resource for government departments, municipalities, NGOs, to use this as policy tools. And so we're doing our best to provide the information and the support that Suzanne was speaking so enthusiastically about, but she ran out of time to work with departments to make this happen. And so
thank you, Minister.
There's a lot of effort being made.
Thank you. Ms. Ambler, for 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming to speak to us today, and also to the officials. I wanted to ask you about involving boys in our fight to eliminate violence against women, and in general, how I know it seems perhaps unorthodox to be talking about boys in the Status of Women Committee, and but I know that you have. I have heard you talk about the importance of getting boys involved in this conversation, and as the mother of a boy who will be 13 years old next month, I think that it's important too to involve boys in talking about how we can make life better for everyone, and how they can understand that being fair and understanding at a young age about equality is eventually going to help us all as a society. And I remember hearing what you've said about that, and I'd like you to maybe talk to us a bit about that this afternoon.
Well, it's I think a very healthy dialogue that Status of Women Canada has we've begun to have over the last year or so with organizations and groups across the country. We worked with the White Ribbon Campaign and the Canada Health Agency, and we funded a brief that the White Ribbon Campaign put out for us because we asked them about this Of course, they do work all over the world now in ending violence against women by including men and in the dialogue. So they, their brief is really interesting. I encourage people to read it. And basically what they say is we can't move forward without including men and boys because they are the perpetrators of violence against women and girls. And they have to be part of the solution. And so we believe that that's key to the next step in the conversation. And I think that that's fairly well received. There's a lot of organizations that want to do more work to include men and boys. I think education is a big part of it. We've seen the school system really embrace issues of anti-bullying and harassment, and some of those go hand in hand with these kinds of issues of respect and dignity and equality. And so I think that's just this is just the next step, is to talk to young people about healthy relationships and equality and respect. And one of the projects that we funded this year was called Don't Be a Bystander, which was with the BC Lions and AVA BC, which is End Violence Against Women in British Columbia. And it's a groundbreaking idea that they would have men as role models. Of course, they're iconic football players, doing public awareness campaigns, TV ads, YouTube videos, and speaking to young boys in school, in front of the girls, of course, because they're in schools, about respecting girls and respecting women. And so the idea is that we find men, and there's many men that are great role models to speak about this issue, to talk to boys about respect for women and healthy relationships. And their message about don't be a bystander is, if you see something like this happen, speak up. And that it's not uncool to talk about this kind of stuff when you're a young boy or a young man. So we think that's a great project. We'd like to see more of them, and we've put that message out there to organizations that we'd like to see greater participation in I think, a healthier dialogue with men and boys. And a lot of men that I talk to want to get involved. Like in Alberta, we have these both the mayors of Calgary and Edmonton throw this breakfast called Breakfast with the Boys. And it's all of the top business leaders and political leaders in the community that get together and have a breakfast, and it's just the boys, and all the money goes towards, it's a huge fundraiser that goes towards the women's shelters. And they've been doing this for years, and so they just applaud this kind of idea and say, we need to do more of that. Men need to get more involved and step up. So I think it's a great initiative, and I'd like to see, I think more schools are interested in doing this kind of programming. Of course, the provinces are starting to talk about this kind of stuff too, so I think it's all positive.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'd like to, well, I'm sure you're aware that we're studying economic participation of women and leadership, and that's what we're working on. I'm very excited about that study, which we've just begun. And one of our, well, we're hearing from a cross-section of witnesses, including women CEOs and a few in non-traditional fields. And I guess I was wondering about your thoughts. You mentioned that we have 3 priorities in terms of funding programs in the Status of Women Canada, that being violence, leadership, economic prosperity. So our study speaks to 2 of those. How can our study complement what the department is doing, what your ministry is doing, I should say?
Well, I think that your topic is a great one, and it I'm sure will complement the work that we've done, and the work that we've done to date shows that economic physical safety goes hand in hand with economic security, and so tackling both those things in parallel are very important, because women that are living in poverty are more apt to experience violence because they just don't have access to the same kind of options. So we have a number of projects across the country dealing with economic security, and a lot of these are helping women, whether it's financial literacy programs or programs to help them learn to start a new business. Those have been very successful. We just announced one recently with the Union of Franco-Ontarian and they have thousands of members in rural Ontario. And they thought that success would be if they had one new business that they were helped create, and I think they were at 23 at that point, and they were overwhelmed because so many women, as you know, women don't feel like they need $1 million to start a business like some men do, and just saying. But women usually, they're happy to sort of scrape together what they have, and they'll start a business right out of their own kitchen, and they're more apt to do that than men. We know that 2/3 of new small businesses are started by women, and that's why, because it's just the nature of women. So we find that these projects have been very successful, and so we want to, especially in rural areas and remote areas where women don't have the same economic opportunities, if women can start a home business or start a business over the internet, we want to help them with that. So
thank you, Minister.
It's been a good success.
Thank you very much. And now to Madame Scro for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and Minister Ambrose. Great to see you here, and applaud the work you did at the UN recently. I unfortunately would have liked to have been there with you. I heard only positive things, so congratulations on the work you're doing there. A couple of questions on the Women's Partnership Fund. That funding has now run out of the period of time that it was operating, and the decrease of the $0.4 million in departmental spending. How are you going to decide what is going to be cut to meet the cut in your budget as far as priorities?
I'll ask Suzanne to comment on the partnership, but.
There has been no change on the partnership fund. There's still a community fund and a partnership fund. I would need more clarification on the reduction in budgets, because there has not been a reduction in the budget.
Tentatively a $0.4 million reduction in departmental spending, I understand, coming?
No.
Well, how, if, and I'm assuming then that as all departments will have to make some degree of cuts given the austerity budget that we're expecting, how do you decide what are your priorities when it comes to program spending and deciding where those kinds of cuts will be? What's your priorities?
We have engaged to review our programs to see where we can streamline and find efficiencies, but our actual programming for the women's program is not going to be impacted.
Good. Well, again, we know where your priorities are. Some of the programs that you have invested in, like the Don't Be a Bystander and some of those other programs, were excellent investments. And clearly we need to engage the men as part of trying to solve the problem of violence against women. Question for you. When legislation is coming forward, is it being subject to gender-based analysis?
Yes.
Was the gun registry subjected to gender-based analysis?
I take your point, and of course there's many statistics on either side of that debate, but obviously the views of many women's organizations were well represented.
Thank you. The issue of, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing some work with the RCMP on the issue of the sexual harassment and so on amongst women. So I think that was a wonderful partnership for you to be able to use gender-based analysis and to be able to do some work in that department. And I think we're all going to look for the kind of success and the leadership that I know that you're going to show on those issues as a department. Have you been able to communicate directly to the department and to the commissioner your concerns with some of the reports of sexual harassment that have surfaced in the last few years?
Well, of course, all of us were troubled, and of course the commissioner himself was very troubled, and he's been very vocal about addressing this issue, and internally he's already taken a number of measures. Suzanne and other officials met with him to offer our advice, support, encouragement, and I have written to him directly telling him I look forward to the results of the Complaints Commission, and also to again offer our support, advice, and encouragement, and I will plan on meeting with him as well.
I would think that you would be the appropriate person in the appropriate department to help a department that clearly has some significant issues to try to deal with. Do you often get the opportunity to work on the culture of an area that is male-dominated? As an example, the RCMP, the military, and so on, where you've got to deal with we have to change the culture of certain organizations in order for them to truly make a difference for the opportunities for women to work in those organizations, which ties in with the study that we are doing as well. Do you get opportunities to do that, to sit down with other areas like that and talk about the culture, not just the GBA issue, but the bigger culture of a male-dominated organization?
Sure. I mean, those kinds of conversations happen, as you know, all the time, but gender-based analysis is one tool. But even, for instance, this year choosing as our theme for Women's Week in October was women in the Canadian Armed Forces. And so the Minister of Defence and the Minister of Veterans Affairs was present to honor women, and from that came other initiatives through the Veterans Affairs Department. And so all of those kinds of initiatives highlight the role of women, and I think help facilitate conversations that might address some of the cultural issues. But I see a lot of goodwill, and particularly on the part of the Commissioner of the RCMP to tackle these issues, and we're there to support. We're all on the same team, and we want to see solutions to these tough challenges that they're facing.
The point being that I think it's very helpful for the department to be able to work with them, and I was very pleased to hear earlier about the gender-based analysis being done and a variety of other things. I think it's the only way we're going to deal with some of our own internal issues. It doesn't matter who's in government. There are issues that need to be dealt with. And I thank you for doing some of that work that you're doing. How do you target the departments to do an analysis of the GBA?
Sure. In terms of working with them to institutionalize the practice, the report from the OAG and the Departmental Action Plan indicated that there should be approximately 6 departments per year that we would be working with specifically. Some of them beyond the 6, and the first year we had 7 or 8. Beyond that, other departments have started on their own. We're moving into year 3, so we've already worked with 15 departments. They self-select in some cases. In other cases, we will go to the department and say, we believe that the policies that you develop are key to be subjected to a GBA analysis. And so there's 2, it's done in collaboration with them, but so far everybody that we've approached has been open to working with us.
Okay. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and that's time. And I'd like to say thank you to the Minister for this opportunity for us to have this dialogue. I'm sure the committee appreciates it very much. And know, Minister, that we would be delighted to have you back at any time, and look forward to a future visit.
Thank you. Thanks for your questions.
Okay. At this point in time, before we proceed to a vote, I would like to say to the committee that the deadline for reporting the main estimates back to the House is May 31st. So we have some time. And to ask the committee if the members wish to leave the study regarding the estimates open for further hearings, or do they wish to proceed to a vote? Madame Troupe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to proceed to a vote on the mains today, before maybe we start our study afterwards.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, all right. Then pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, the main estimates for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2013 were referred to the Standing Committee on the Status of Women, Human Resources and Skills Development, votes 30 and 35. Shall vote 30 under Human Resources and Skills Development carry? All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, thank you. That's carried. Shall vote 35 under Human Resources and Skills Development carry? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. That's carried. shall I report votes 30 and 35 under Human Resources and Skills Development to the House? All those in favor, please indicate. Opposed? Thank you. That too is carried. So thank you very much, and I guess we don't have to suspend because the minister, we do? All right. Suspend for 2 minutes and allow our next panel to move forward.